The first question I want to ask you is, what would you attempt to do if you could not fail? I think in order to really see the profit of your intent, you have to go into any venture as if you cannot fail. I actually think that intent and conviction are the two qualities that are non-negotiable for success. And when we look back at entrepreneurs, conquerors, people that we admire throughout history, they all had two things in common: intent and conviction. When you look back at one of the greatest stories we all know, David and Goliath, you had a young shepherd boy, had never been to battle in his life, hadn't trained in combat, but yet he was convicted that he could actually take down the champion of the Philistines so that people knew the God of Israel was real. And what was the outcome for David? It was absolute success. When you look at the definition of intent, you'll notice it can either be used as a noun or an adjective. I actually think it's a combination of both. Because in order for you to really be determined to do something, you must have a purpose for it. If you do not have a purpose, you will never find the conviction to be able to see it through to its end. There are a few things in my life that I've been very intense on. The first one was actually moving to Washington, D.C. When I was 22 years old, I got a job in Mississippi working state politics. I fell in love. I was so sure that if I worked for Congress, my life would be complete. So I picked up, moved to Washington, D.C., moved in with a cousin I had only met one time for 3 days in my entire life. And sure enough, it worked out. 2 years after moving to Washington, D.C., I was able to work for Congress. Unfortunately for me, I hated it. I hated it so much that when the Democrats lost the House, I was actually relieved because I knew I would lose my job. And I remember my boss called me in his office and he said, "You know, Cordie, I don't think you should look for another job. I think you should create something. You should lead something. You'd be happier." So I decided to take a trip. And on that trip, I came to Ghana. Now, my father is Ghanaian and Sierra Leonean, but he mainly grew up in Sierra Leone. I don't have a whole lot of ties in Ghana. But when I came to Ghana, I instantly knew it was home. So I did the most feasible thing I could. After a 3-week visit, I went home, packed up all my belongings, sold everything off, and I arrived in Ghana with 3 suitcases. The first few years, I really didn't have a conviction to do much. I just knew I was intent upon making Ghana my home. But one day, on the beach, some friends and I were having a conversation. And I noticed a little boy get out of the water. And when he got out of the water, he had a plastic bag on him. So I called him over and asked, "How does it make you feel that you actually have to swim on a beach with plastic?" And he was clueless. And that's the first moment I became convicted. Because you see, in Ghana, we're too used to everything being dirty. We're too used to seeing plastic on the beaches. We're too used to having dirty gutters. We're too used to waste companies not picking up. But I don't think that should actually be the case. So, some of us talk about it, some of us do it. I decided to do something.